Welcome to True Freedom. Today we're diving into a challenging yet fascinating topic. Why Nietzsche rejected religion, morality, and tradition in Human, All Too Human. Have you ever wondered what drove a great philosopher like Nietzsche to challenge centuries-old values? Or how can we find true freedom in a world full of constraints? The renowned writer Victor Hugo once said, "Nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come." And today we'll explore Nietzsche's groundbreaking ideas, a man who dared to question the very foundations society held sacred. Imagine if Socrates had lived in Nietzsche's time. Would he have agreed with Nietzsche's bold challenge to all norms? So, what do you think about letting go of old values to seek freedom? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's embark on this journey to uncover Nietzsche's philosophy and experience the power of the free spirit. 1. General introduction to Human, All Too Human. Human, All Too Human, a book for free spirits published by Friedrich Nietzsche in 1878, stands as a monument of a crisis for Nietzsche, a pivotal moment in both his personal life and philosophical journey. This work marks the end of an era, particularly symbolized by the collapse of his long-standing friendship with Richard Wagner, a relationship that had deeply influenced his earlier works. But what led to this dramatic shift? Was it merely a difference in ideals, or was it something deeper, rooted in Nietzsche's evolving vision of the world? Moreover, Nietzsche's deteriorating health played a significant role in reshaping his path. For nearly a decade, he had served as a professor at the University of Basel, but chronic ailments forced him to step away from academia. Since childhood, Nietzsche had battled severe physical challenges, moments of near blindness due to short-sightedness, debilitating migraines, and violent indigestion. Yet, these afflictions were not the sole reasons for his departure. Nietzsche believed that academic life, with its rigid structures and conventions, stifled the creativity and freedom essential for a true philosopher. As Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment." Nietzsche's decision to leave academia was, in many ways, an embrace of this philosophy, a bold step toward forging his own path. Imagine a man torn between societal expectations and his inner calling. How would you choose if faced with such a dilemma? Nietzsche's choice to abandon the familiar comforts of academia in pursuit of intellectual liberation serves as a powerful example of self-overcoming, a theme that would later define much of his work. To shift in Nietzsche's philosophy. Human, All Too Human marks the beginning of a second period in Nietzsche's philosophy, his emergence as an independent thinker unshackled from the influences of his past. In this transformative work, Nietzsche embraces the spirit of the 18th century Enlightenment, decisively rejecting the romanticism that had defined his earlier masterpiece, The Birth of Tragedy, which was heavily inspired by Richard Wagner. But why did Nietzsche turn away from romanticism? Perhaps because he saw it as an illusion, a retreat into emotion and myth that avoided confronting the rot roots of human existence. Nietzsche also distanced himself from the pessimistic philosophy of Schopenhauer, who argued that to reduce suffering, one must renounce the will entirely. Schopenhauer viewed human existence as an endless, insatiable striving, a perspective Nietzsche found deeply flawed. Instead of accepting this bleak outlook, Nietzsche characterized such ascetic renunciation as a will to nothingness, a surrender to nihilism. In its place, he proposed the revolutionary concept of the will to power, where life itself is defined by striving, growth, and self-overcoming. As Nietzsche would later write in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." This idea encapsulates the essence of his philosophy. Life is not about avoiding pain but embracing struggle as a means of transformation. Although the will to power is not yet explicitly articulated in Human, All Too Human, its embryonic form is unmistakably present. Nietzsche's lifelong intellectual pursuit revolved around the theme of overcoming. For him, life is a constant process of transcending limitations. Health is the overcoming of sickness, new societal values replace outdated ones, and each stage of an individual's life represents a form of self-overcoming. Consider the metaphor of a sculptor chiseling away at a block of marble. Each strike removes imperfections, gradually revealing the masterpiece within. Similarly, Nietzsche believed that individuals and societies must continually reshape themselves to achieve higher forms of existence. This shift in Nietzsche's thought invites us to reflect: how often do we cling to comfort and familiarity, avoiding the challenges that could lead to growth? What might our lives look like if we embraced struggle as an opportunity for self-overcoming? These questions lie at the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy and could resonate with readers today. 3. Writing style and philosophical method. This book marks a turning point in terms of Nietzsche's style, characterized by his use of the aphorism. The 638 aphorisms in Human, all too human, vary in length from just a few words to several pages, though most consist of short paragraphs. This approach reflects an unsystematic method of philosophy, standing in stark contrast to earlier philosophers who sought comprehensive explanations for every aspect of existence. This style epitomizes Nietzsche's philosophical vision, which prioritizes intellectual provocation over rigid doctrines. The work emphasizes that human weaknesses, not strengths, deserve our primary attention. Nietzsche argues that concise observations about human nature can aid in navigating life's difficult moments. There is an underlying motivation to transcend what is human, all too human, through philosophical reflection. By scrutinizing the imperfections and vulnerabilities inherent in humanity, Nietzsche encourages us to engage in deep introspection about our own limitations and how we might rise above them. He once posed the incisive question, "What does your conscience say? You shall become who you are." This inquiry reverberates throughout the text, urging readers to face their authentic selves. In the preface, Nietzsche expands on the notion of free spirits, to whom the book is dedicated. "Thus I invented, when I needed them, the free spirits, to whom this heavy-hearted, stout-hearted book with the title Human, all too human, is dedicated. There are no such free spirits, but, as I said, I needed their company at the time, to be of good cheer amidst adversity, illness, isolation, forensics, sloth, inactivity, as brave companions and phantoms to converse with, whenever one feels inclined to chat and laugh, that such free spirits could one day exist tangible, and really am the last person to wish to deny that. I already see them approaching, slowly for Nietzsche. The free spirit undergoes a great liberation, breaking free from the chains of tradition that had previously bound it. Such spirits exemplify the bravery to question societal norms and pursue truth beyond established limits. Picture someone emerging from the shadow of inherited beliefs, akin to a bird leaving its cage for the first time, uncertain yet invigorated by the thrill of newfound freedom. Nietzsche's focus on individuality and self-transcendence parallels Ralph Waldo Emerson's declaration, "To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest achievement." Both thinkers advocate for shedding external constraints to embrace authenticity. Through his aphoristic style, Nietzsche critiques traditional philosophical frameworks while simultaneously providing readers with a lens to explore their inner worlds. His fragmented technique mirrors the intricate nature of human existence itself, a tapestry woven from contradictions, struggles, and aspirations. By adopting this unconventional approach, Nietzsche challenges us to reconsider how philosophy ought to be articulated and embodied. Instead of presenting sweeping theories or absolute truths, he offers flashes of profound insight, leaving the remainder open to interpretation. In this way, he transforms philosophy into a living dialogue between writer and reader, a conversation that continues to resonate across generations. For structure of the work and content of each section. Section 1. Origins of metaphysical beliefs. Human. All too human is divided into 9 sections, each exploring a different facet of human thought and existence. In the first section, titled Of First and Last Things, Nietzsche embarks on a fascinating investigation into the origins of metaphysical beliefs, those ideas about ultimate reality, God, or the afterlife that have captivated humanity for centuries. But where do these beliefs come from? Nietzsche traces their roots not to divine revelation, but to more earthly sources, physiological phenomena like dreams, psychological states such as dissatisfaction with oneself, or even the very structure of language itself. Nietzsche's insights into language are particularly striking. He observes, the shaper of language was not so modest as to think that he was only giving things labels. Rather, he imagined that he was expressing the highest knowledge of things with words, and in fact, language is the first stage of scientific effort. Here, Nietzsche highlights how language shapes our understanding of the world, often imbuing it with meanings that transcend mere utility. Words become vessels for grand ideas, yet they can also lead us astray, creating illusions of certainty where none exists. Ultimately, Nietzsche concludes that we can know nothing definitive about a metaphysical world, even if such a realm were to exist. Why does this matter? Because, as Nietzsche provocatively argues, any knowledge of the metaphysical would be the most inconsequential of all knowledge. To illustrate this point, he offers a vivid analogy. Such knowledge would be even more inconsequential than the knowledge of the chemical analysis of water must be to the boatman facing a storm. For the boatman, survival depends not on abstract scientific data but on immediate, practical action. Similarly, Nietzsche suggests that humanity's obsession with metaphysical questions distracts us from the pressing realities of life. This theme reflects what might be called Nietzsche's bliss in the unhappiness of knowledge, a paradoxical embrace of the limitations of human understanding. By letting go of the need for absolute truths, we open ourselves to a deeper engagement with the tangible, imperfect, and ever-changing world around us. As Albert Einstein once remarked, the more I study science, the more I believe in the mystery of existence. Nietzsche, too, invites us to find wonder not in distant metaphysical realms, but in the here and now. So, the next time you find yourself pondering life's deepest mysteries, ask yourself, are you seeking answers that truly matter, or are you chasing shadows cast by the language and assumptions of your own mind? This question lies at the heart of Nietzsche's exploration in Of First and Last Things. Section 2. History of Moral Feelings. For relinquishing metaphysical beliefs, the philosopher gains an opportunity for greater freedom. Section 2. On the History of Moral Feelings, draws inspiration from his friend Paul Aries on the origin of moral sensations, and foreshadows Nietzsche's later work, Trineology of Morals. Nietzsche investigates the history of moral feelings as a means to alleviate the burden of living. Through this inquiry, he aims not only to uncover the origins of morality, but also to dismantle its deceptive dominance over human conduct. He scrutinizes the genesis of morality, revealing the fallacy behind the concepts of good and evil. Nietzsche positions himself as an immoralist, venturing beyond the confines of good and evil. Indeed, he equates morality with custom. To be moral, correct, ethical, means to obey an age-old law tradition we call good. The person who acts morally as if by instinct, effortlessly and willingly, regardless of what it entails to be evil, is to be immoral. To indulge in vices, to defy tradition, whether it be rational or irrational, when people distinguish between moral and immoral, good and evil, the fundamental opposition is not egoism versus selflessness, but rather compliance with a tradition or law and liberation from it. Nietzsche prompts us to interrogate why we remain attached to these inherited moral systems. Why do we designate certain actions as inherently good or evil when these labels are merely social fabrications? Take, for example, how diverse cultures interpret morality. What is deemed virtuous in one community may be scorned in another. This variability reinforces Nietzsche's contention that morality has little to do with universal truths and much to do with conformity to prevailing norms. As he provocatively asserts, morality is the herd instinct in the individual, underscoring how profoundly societal expectations mold our perceptions of right and wrong. By discarding the binary of good versus evil, Nietzsche invites us to adopt a more sophisticated outlook on human conduct. He contends that genuine freedom resides in surpassing these fabricated boundaries. Picture a sculptor carving away at a block of stone, stripping away layers of preconceived ideas until the unadorned core of humanity is revealed. Likewise, Nietzsche implores individuals to cast off the weight of moral dogma and chart their own courses. As Emerson eloquently stated, nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. Both philosophers advocate for self-reliance and intellectual autonomy. Moreover, Nietzsche's critique of morality delves into its psychological ramifications. By rigidly adhering to traditional values, individuals jeopardize their creativity and authentic selves. Reflect on the strain of conforming to societal benchmarks of success or virtue. How frequently does this result in internal discord and discontent? Nietzsche cautions against letting external criteria dictate one's value, urging instead for a life steered by personal convictions and vigor. Through his analysis of moral feelings, Nietzsche establishes the foundation for a revolutionary reconstruction piece of ethics. Instead of accepting morality as a static and unchangeable framework, he encourages readers to perceive it as a fluid interaction of customs, traditions, and individual decisions. This perspective not only emancipates the individual from obsolete restrictions, but also cultivates a richer comprehension of the intricacies embedded in human nature. Ultimately, Nietzsche's reflections challenge us to reimagine what it signifies to lead a purposeful and gratifying life, one unfettered by the chains of conventional morality. Section 3. Religious life. The third section, Religious Life, examines religious worship from a psychological perspective. Without blind disciples, no man or his work has ever gained great influence. Sometimes to promote the triumph of a form of knowledge means only that one marries it to stupidity, so that the sheer weight of that stupidity propels the success of the knowledge. Nietzsche's incisive commentary highlights the intricate connection between human psychology and the dissemination of ideas. Blind faith, though frequently derided as irrational, emerges as a potent force in spreading beliefs, be they profound truths or hollow illusions. This paradox prompts a compelling question: is it preferable for an idea to remain pristine and obscure, or to attain widespread influence at the expense of being diluted by ignorance? The ascetic way of life represents another battleground for humanity, this time against a fragment of itself. There exists a defiance against oneself that encompasses among its most exalted manifestations various forms of asceticism. Eventually, it dawns on them to oppress certain aspects of their own essence and almost plead to be despised by others. This fragmentation of oneself, this contempt for one's own nature which religions have capitalized on so extensively, is in reality a highly refined form of vanity. In this passage, Nietzsche exposes the concealed motivations behind ascetic practices, arguing that self-denial is not necessarily an act of humility, but rather a complicated dance of pride and self-reproach. Consider the monk who renounces earthly pleasures in pursuit of spiritual transcendence. Does he genuinely seek divine favor, or is he motivated by a yearning to demonstrate his dominance over base instincts? Nietzsche urges us to peer beneath the surface of religious rituals and asceticism to uncover the latent human drives. He posits that these practices often arise from a need to exert control over chaos not merely in the external world but within oneself. Practices such as fasting, prayer, and meditation can function as instruments to impose structure on turbulent desires, yet they may also conceal deeper insecurities or unresolved tensions. As Sigmund Freud later remarked, the voice of the intellect is a quiet one, but it does not cease until it is heard. Could it be that asceticism is less about surpassing humanity and more about wrestling with its intrinsic contradictions? Furthermore, Nietzsche critiques the role of religion in perpetuating what he terms a highly refined form of vanity. By sanctifying self-abnegation, religions inadvertently elevate individuals who excel at self-mortification, establishing a peculiar hierarchy in which suffering becomes a mark of distinction. Envision someone who deliberately subjects themselves to severe deprivation not out of sincere piety, but to garner admiration or perhaps pity from others. Such conduct, Nietzsche contends, reflects a covert form of narcissism, where the individual seeks affirmation through acts of self-destruct. Through his exploration of religious life, Nietzsche invites readers to reassess the true objectives of faith and spirituality. Rather than accepting doctrine uncritically, he advocates for a rigorous examination of the psychological dynamics that underpin religious practices. What if the ultimate aim of religion is not to evade human weakness, but to engage with it directly? By embracing our flaws instead of rejecting them, we may uncover a more genuine route to fulfillment. Ultimately, Nietzsche's reflections on religious life challenge us to re-evaluate the interplay between belief, identity, and power. His critique serves as a poignant reminder that even the holiest traditions are grounded in human needs and aspirations. Whether through blind discipleship or ascetic rigor, individuals strive for meaning and mastery in ways that mirror both their capacities and vulnerabilities. As Nietzsche provocatively inquires, is man merely a mistake of gods, or God merely a mistake of man? This query resonates like an enduring echo, compelling us to probe the frontiers of faith and reason. Section 4. From the Soul of Artists and Writers. In the fourth section, From the Soul of Artists and Writers, Nietzsche turns his critical gaze toward the aesthetic experience, challenging one of the most cherished myths of artistic creation, the notion of divine inspiration. For centuries, artists have been romanticized as vessels of supernatural forces, their works seen as gifts from the gods rather than products of human effort. But Nietzsche boldly rejects this idea, asserting that art is not the result of miracles or mystical intervention. It is the product of relentless hard work, discipline, and intellectual rigor. Though Nietzsche does not explicitly name Richard Wagner in this section, the shadow of his former friend looms large. The term artist itself becomes a veiled reference to Wagner, symbolizing Nietzsche's decisive break with Romanticism, a movement that glorified emotion, intuition, and transcendence. Instead of clinging to these ideals, Nietzsche looks back to pre-Romantic figures, such as Voltaire and Goethe, whose works exemplified reason, clarity, and a grounded approach to creativity. These thinkers become Nietzsche's intellectual allies in his quest to redefine art and its purpose. This section also foreshadows Nietzsche's famous method of philosophizing with a hammer, a metaphor for his relentless critique of established ideas and traditions. His goal is not primarily to construct new systems of values or beliefs, but to dismantle the old, flawed ways of thinking that have shaped Western culture. As he puts it, the bad thing about all systems is that they give the appearance of finality. Nietzsche challenges us to question everything, especially the assumptions we take for granted, and to embrace the uncertainty that comes with breaking free from conventional thought. Imagine an artist chipping away at a marble block, not to create something entirely new, but to reveal the flaws and cracks within the material itself. In much the same way, Nietzsche's critique of art and aesthetics serves as a hammer striking at the foundations of Romantic idealism. exposing its weaknesses and urging humanity to seek deeper, more authentic forms of expression. So, what does this mean for us as creators or consumers of art? Should we continue to romanticize the tortured genius archetype, or should we celebrate the labor, discipline, and courage it takes to produce meaningful work? Nietzsche's insights invite us to reconsider not only how we view art, but also how we engage with the world around us. After all, as Pablo Picasso once said, inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. Section 5. Signs of Higher and Lower Culture. In Section 5, Signs of Higher and Lower Culture, Nietzsche articulates his response to the deconstruction he has undertaken, elaborating on the concept of the free spirit, which will later evolve into the sage Zarathustra, paving the way for the Mensch, the ultimate manifestation of humanity and the zenith of self-overcoming. This notion emerges as a guiding light amid the wreckage of traditional values, presenting a vision of humankind that transcends the limitations of conventional morality and societal conventions. Nietzsche delineates the role of the free spirit within a culture. It is his mission to challenge the old, the customary, to strike at society's weakest points, and to shoulder the fears of society in order to foster its growth and evolution. The free spirit acts as a transformative force, embodying the audacity to interrogate deeply ingrained beliefs and practices. Picture a gardener trimming away dead wood to make room for fresh growth. Such is the task of the free spirit, whose efforts may appear destructive but are ultimately geared toward nurturing renewal. The free spirit epitomizes the new, affirmative trajectory of Nietzsche's philosophy. It is, in essence, the philosopher as Nietzsche envisions him. For while there is no truth for Nietzsche neither in metaphysical, moral, religious, nor aesthetic terms, there are truths, and it is these that the free spirit will pursue, since no honey is sweeter than that of knowledge. His foundational principle that truth is never absolute but subjective, coupled with his rejection of the supremacy of any philosophical system, has enabled existentialists to hail Nietzsche as one of its spiritual progenitors. However, Nietzsche's perspective transcends mere existential despair. It exalts the quest for knowledge as an act of emancipation. As Aristotle aptly noted, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom, and for Nietzsche, this self-awareness must be pursued tirelessly, even if it results in unease or disruption. The journey of the free spirit is not devoid of danger. By renouncing established doctrines and venturing into unexplored intellectual realms, he courts estrangement and derision. Society frequently clings to familiar ideologies because they offer a semblance of security, albeit deceptive. Yet the free spirit recognizes that genuine progress demands venturing beyond the boundaries of comfort. Recall Galileo, who defied the Church's geocentric view of the cosmos, or Socrates, who prodded Athenians to scrutinize their notions of virtue and justice. These historical figures embody the spirit of defiance that Nietzsche extols, a readiness to confront ambiguity and embrace the unfamiliar. Furthermore, Nietzsche stresses that the free spirit does not wholly dismiss tradition, but instead reinterprets it through a discerning lens. He combs through the remnants of past ideas, preserving what retains value while jettisoning what has become obsolete. This process parallels the work of an archaeologist, meticulously uncovering fragments of history to assemble a coherent story. In doing so, the free spirit contributes to the progression of culture, ensuring that it remains vibrant and adaptable to shifting conditions. By advocating for the free spirit, Nietzsche establishes the foundation for a profound re-envisioning of human potential. The Mensch, introduced later in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, embodies the apex of this idea, a being who fashions their own values and lives authentically, unencumbered by external demands. Though the road to becoming such a figure is laden with obstacles, Nietzsche maintains that it is a noble pursuit deserving of effort. After all, as he memorably proclaimed, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Ultimately, Nietzsche's examination of higher and lower culture highlights the significance of individual agency in shaping the future. By adopting the ethos of the free spirit, we can liberate ourselves from the chains of conformity and contribute to the betterment of society. Whether through art, philosophy, or daily acts of resistance against mediocrity, each of us possesses the ability to leave a lasting legacy. As Nietzsche provocatively inquires, what would existence be worth if there were no such men? This query strikes a deep chord, compelling us to aspire to greatness and redefine what it means to live fully. Section 6. Man in Society. In Section 6, Man in Society, Nietzsche delves into the intricate dynamics of human behavior within the social fabric. He examines the subtle art of societal manners, revealing how people navigate their interactions with a mix of strategy, pretense, and calculated self-interest. What lies beneath the polished surface of polite conversation or the carefully maintained facades of everyday life? Nietzsche's keen observations uncover the prevalence of dodges, hypocrisy, and cunning that permeate human relationships. Consider the countless ways individuals manipulate truth to serve their purposes, whether it's a well-timed compliment to win favor, a deliberate omission to avoid conflict, or a clever lie to protect one's reputation. These tactics, Nietzsche argues, are not anomalies but rather intrinsic to the way society functions. Human interactions often resemble a delicate dance, where each participant is both performer and critic, constantly adjusting their steps to maintain harmony, or at least the illusion of it. But why do we engage in such behaviors? Is it merely a survival mechanism, a way to shield ourselves from the harshness of reality? Or is it a reflection of deeper insecurities and fears about how we are perceived by others? Nietzsche challenges us to confront these uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our societies. As he might suggest, the masks we wear in public are not just tools for navigating social spaces, they are also barriers that prevent genuine connection and authenticity. To illustrate this point, imagine a crowded room where everyone is smiling, exchanging pleasantries, and projecting an image of confidence and success. Yet beneath the surface, there may be envy, insecurity, or even hostility simmering unnoticed. This duality between appearance and reality is what fascinates Nietzsche. He invites us to peel back the layers of societal convention and ask, who are we when no one is watching? And more importantly, who could we become if we stopped playing the game altogether? As Mark Twain once quipped, it is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Nietzsche's exploration of societal hypocrisy echoes this sentiment, urging us to question the roles we play and the systems we uphold. By doing so, we might begin to see society not as a rigid structure but as a dynamic arena where individuals can choose to either conform or challenge the status quo. Section 7. Woman and Child. In Section 7, Woman and Child, Nietzsche provides psychological insights, such as everyone carries within him an image of woman, which he gets from his mother. He continues, usually a mother loves herself in her son more than she loves the son himself. These observations highlight Nietzsche's acute understanding of how early familial relationships mold our perceptions and emotional frameworks. The bond between mother and child, he suggests, transcends mere caregiving. It involves a nuanced interplay of identity, projection, and self-regard. Think of an artist who instinctively incorporates elements of their own likeness into every figure they depict, such as the enduring and often subconscious influence of maternal figures on our inner lives. Nietzsche conveys optimism regarding the future of women, foreseeing a time when they will surpass traditional roles and embrace greater autonomy. Nevertheless, his optimism is balanced by doubt concerning the compatibility of marriage with the lifestyle of the free spirit. He asserts, will free spirits live with women? This declaration encapsulates Nietzsche's conviction that the imperatives of intellectual liberty and the restrictions of conventional relationships are fundamentally incompatible. For the free spirit, solitude becomes both a requirement and a preference, a realm where originality and genuineness can thrive without hindrance. Yet, what implications does this hold for the notion of partnership? Is it conceivable for two individuals to coexist without impeding each other's development? Nietzsche's stance prompts us to reassess the essence of closeness and companionship. Although he pictures the free spirit as inherently solitary, one might inquire whether reciprocal comprehension and aligned principles could reconcile freedom with connection. Envisioned to celestial bodies orbiting one another, they retain their individuality, yet their mutual attraction fosters a balanced interaction. Could such equilibrium exist between a free spirit and a partner who shares their outlook? Additionally, Nietzsche's musings on women and children elicit broader inquiries about societal anticipations and gender roles. His remark that mothers frequently perceive themselves mirrored in their sons intimates the manner in which personal aspirations and cultural standards converge. Historically, women have been socialized to attain satisfaction through their associations with others, be it as spouses, mothers, or caretakers. Nietzsche's aspiration for the future of women signifies a transition away from these imposed identities toward a more self-determined way of life. As Virginia Woolf later articulated in A Room of One's Own, a woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. Both philosophers stress the significance of space, both tangible and symbolic, for self-actualization. Simultaneously, Nietzsche's contention that free spirits must fly alone raises critical reflections on the trade-offs involved in the quest for intellectual and spiritual emancipation. To live authentically may necessitate discarding societal customs, including those pertaining to love and family. But is this trajectory feasible or appealing for all? For some, solitude may prove empowering, whereas for others, it might culminate in estrangement. As Nietzsche himself recognized, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. Ultimately, Nietzsche's deliberations on women and children accentuate the friction between tradition and progress, reliance and self-sufficiency. His critique of marriage and endorsement of solitude mirror wider philosophical dedication to dismantling inherited frameworks. Nonetheless, his words also permit interpretation and discussion. Can the free spirit achieve harmony in partnership, or is solitude the sole avenue to genuine freedom? These queries persist, prompting readers to examine their own convictions about love, identity, and the human yearning for connection. Section 8. A Look at the State. In Section 8, A Look at the State, Nietzsche turns his incisive gaze toward the structures of power that underpin the state. With characteristic boldness, he dissects the mechanisms of governance and societal organization, challenging conventional interpretations of political dynamics. When examining the demands of the lower classes for their share of resources or rights, Nietzsche does not view these claims as cries for social justice or equality. Instead, he likens them to the beast's roar at food he cannot have, a primal, instinctuant reaction driven by envy and desire rather than a noble pursuit of fairness. This perspective raises an intriguing question. Are movements for social change motivated by genuine aspirations for justice, or are they merely expressions of base human instincts? Nietzsche's interpretation forces us to confront the uncomfortable possibility that much of what we label as progress may stem from the same drives that govern animals in the wild: hunger, competition, and survival. While this view may seem harsh or even cynical, it aligns with Nietzsche's broader philosophy, which often strips away the veneer of idealism to reveal the raw forces beneath. Nietzsche's critique of the state extends further, culminating in his provocative proclamation of the death of the state. Much like his earlier declaration of the death of God, this statement is not a literal prediction but a philosophical stance. He envisions a future where traditional institutions of power, whether religious or political, lose their grip on humanity. In their place, individuals would rise to define their own values and destinies, unshackled from the constraints of outdated systems. To illustrate this idea, imagine a towering oak tree whose roots have begun to decay. From the outside, the tree may still appear strong, but its foundation is crumbling. Similarly, Nietzsche sees the state as an institution whose time has passed, sustained only by habit and fear. What might society look like if we were brave enough to let go of these decaying structures and embrace a new way of organizing ourselves? As George Orwell once wrote, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. This famous line from Animal Farm echoes Nietzsche's skepticism about the promises of equality and justice within the framework of the state. Both thinkers challenge us to look beyond surface-level ideals and examine the underlying power dynamics that shape our world. Ultimately, Nietzsche's analysis of the state invites us to reflect: if the state is indeed a construct born of human need and ambition, can it ever truly serve the higher aspirations of humanity? Or is it destined to remain a tool of control, perpetuating the very inequalities it claims to address? These questions resonate deeply in today's world, urging us to reconsider the role of institutions in shaping our collective future. Section 9. Man Alone with Himself. The final section, Man Alone with Himself, takes on a poetic and reflective tone, revealing Nietzsche's deeply personal musings on the human condition. Here, we encounter a sense of mellow resignation as Nietzsche contemplates the ultimate solitude of existence. He writes, however far man may extend himself with knowledge, however objective he may appear to himself ultimately, he carries away with him nothing but his own biography. These words resonate with a profound truth. No matter how vast our intellectual pursuits or how detached we strive to be, we remain tethered to the story of our own lives. Knowledge, ambition, and even philosophy cannot erase the deeply individual nature of our journey. In this section, Nietzsche emerges as a solitary wanderer, content in his own company and guided by his inner counsel. This image foreshadows his later works, such as The Wanderer and His Shadow, and ultimately the iconic figure of Zarathustra, a philosopher who ascends metaphorical mountains to seek wisdom and then descends to share it with humanity. Yet, even in these moments of imagined connection, Nietzsche reminds us that true understanding often begins and ends within ourselves. But what does it mean to truly embrace our imperfections? Nietzsche challenges us to see beauty not in flawless achievements but in the messy, unpredictable process of living. As Leonard Cohen famously wrote, there is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. These cracks, the mistakes, the failures, the laughter are what make life meaningful. Imagine an artist whose painting is imperfect, with brushstrokes up that stray outside the lines. It is precisely these imperfections that give the work its character and soul. Similarly, our lives are shaped not by perfection, but by the moments that defy expectation and reveal our humanity. Ultimately, this section invites us to reflect on our own solitude and connections. How do we balance the introspective journey of self-discovery with the joy of shared experiences? And when we reach the end of our lives, what will we carry with us beyond the stories we've lived? Nietzsche's words linger like a gentle whisper, urging us to cherish both our solitude and our bonds with others as we navigate the winding path of existence. Consider the metaphor of a river carving its way through a landscape. The river flows alone, yet it shapes the world around it, creating connections and leaving traces of its passage. In much the same way, Nietzsche suggests that while we are solitary beings at our core, our interactions with others leave indelible marks on our lives and the lives of those we touch. As you ponder these ideas, ask yourself, how can I embrace my own story, flaws and all, while remaining open to the beauty of connection? Nietzsche's reflections remind us that life is not a destination but a journey best traveled with a heart that values both its solitude and its shared moments. Through this article, we've explored Nietzsche's journey of rejecting religion, morality, and tradition in pursuit of freedom and self-overcoming. He teaches us that there is no absolute truth, only relative values that each individual must seek for themselves. As Nietzsche once said, "No honey is sweeter than that of knowledge." The philosopher Bertrand Russell once remarked, "Philosophy is not about providing answers, but teaching us how to ask questions." Hopefully, this article has given you a deeper understanding of the importance of challenging old norms and finding your own path. Please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video if you found it helpful. We'd love to hear your thoughts on Nietzsche's philosophy in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on True Freedom. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring profound ideas. The exciting discussion will begin in just a few moments.
All right, so you sent over some excerpts from this article called Why Nietzsche Rejected Religion, Morality, and Tradition in Human, All Too Human. And
Okay.
I have to say, I'm pretty excited for this one. This
Yeah.
book seems like a total turning point for Nietzsche almost. Like he was hitting the reset button on his entire philosophy.
It absolutely was a major shift. And to fully grasp the weight of that shift, I think we need to understand the context.
Okay.
Human, All Too Human, was published in 1878,
Okay.
right after what Nietzsche himself called a crisis period.
Okay. A crisis period. So was this like a midlife crisis, but for a philosopher?
Well, it definitely involved a lot of upheaval.
Okay.
He cut ties with Wagner, who had been a massive influence on his early work.
Right.
Plus, health issues forced him to leave his teaching position.
Wow.
Imagine grappling with physical limitations while also feeling like you're intellectually suffocating.
Yeah. I can see how that would make someone question everything.
Right.
It's like he was at a crossroads, forced to choose between sticking with what was safe and familiar
Right.
or striking out on his own path.
And Nietzsche, being Nietzsche, chose the path less traveled.
Of course.
It reminds me of that Emerson quote.
Okay.
To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment.
Wow.
Nietzsche was determined to be himself, even if it meant rejecting everything he'd previously believed.
Right. And that brings us to Human, All Too Human.
Right.
The article mentions he basically throws out everything.
Yeah.
Romanticism, Schopenhauer's pessimism.
Yeah.
It's like he's building a whole new philosophy from the ground up.
It's like he's chiseling away at the old will to reveal something completely new.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating because you can see him moving away from ideas that he found limiting.
Okay.
Particularly the focus on emotion and intuition in Romanticism.
Right.
And Schopenhauer's view that we should just give up on our desires to avoid suffering.
Yeah.
Nietzsche thought that led to a dead end.
Okay. Instead, he starts developing this idea of the will to power.
Yes.
Which I know becomes a huge theme in his later works.
Right.
But the article says it's not fully formed yet in Human, All Too Human.
Right. It's more like he's laying the groundwork.
Okay.
You see glimpses of it in his emphasis on overcoming obstacles, on constantly striving to become a stronger, more complete individual.
So it's not about dominating others, but more about pushing your own boundaries.
Yes.
Constantly evolve.
Exactly. It's about recognizing and harnessing the force within you that drives you to create, to grow, to overcome.
That makes me think about all the times I've stayed stuck in my comfort zone, afraid to take risks or challenge myself.
Yeah.
Maybe a little discomfort is exactly what we need to tap into, that will to power.
That's a question Nietzsche wants us to wrestle with. Are we choosing comfort over growth? Because it's in those moments of struggle that we discover our true potential.
Now let's talk about Nietzsche's writing style in this book. I noticed it's not your typical philosophical treatise.
Yeah.
He uses aphorisms, these short, punchy statements.
Right.
Instead of building these long, complex arguments.
Yeah.
Why the change?
I think it's a deliberate choice to make us think, to provoke a reaction.
Okay.
Instead of laying out a systematic philosophy, he's giving us these flashes of insight, these nuggets of wisdom that we have to grapple with on our own.
Yeah, there are over 600 of these aphorisms in human, all too human.
Wow.
Covering everything from the origins of our beliefs to the nature of art and society.
Yeah.
It seems like he wanted to shake people out of their complacency, make them question everything they thought they knew.
Absolutely, and this is where the free spirit comes in.
Okay.
Nietzsche actually dedicated human, all too human, to these free spirits.
Yeah.
Individuals who are able to break free from the constraints of tradition and dogma and forge their own paths.
So a free spirit isn't just someone who rebels for the sake of it.
No.
They're driven by a deeper desire for truth and self-discovery.
Exactly. They question everything, challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
And they're willing to embrace discomfort in their pursuit of knowledge.
They sound like the kind of people who really push society forward,
Yeah.
even if they make some people uncomfortable along the way.
They're the ones who drive progress, and Nietzsche saw them as essential for the evolution of humanity.
Right.
It's almost like he was creating a blueprint for a new kind of human being.
Right.
One who embraces their individuality and refuses to be bound by outdated beliefs.
Okay, so we have Nietzsche going through this huge life change, ditching the philosophies he's been studying, developing this idea of the will to power, writing in this totally unique style, and calling upon these free spirits to join him.
Yeah.
Human, all too human sounds less like a book and more like a manifesto.
It is a powerful statement of intent, and the article you shared breaks down the book section by section,
Okay.
which I think will help us understand the nuances of his thinking.
I'm ready to dive into those sections. But before we do, I have to ask, how does Nietzsche's rejection of these traditional philosophies connect to this idea of being a free spirit?
That's a great question. I think for Nietzsche, being a free spirit meant freeing yourself from the intellectual chains of the past.
Oh, okay.
He saw Romanticism and Schopenhauer's pessimism as traps, as systems of thought that limited human potential.
So by breaking free from those philosophies, he was clearing the way for a new way of thinking, a way of being that embraced individuality, growth, and the pursuit of self-discovery.
Exactly. And that's what he wanted to offer to his free spirits.
Okay.
A path toward a richer, more fulfilling life, unburdened by the weight of tradition.
All right, with that in mind, let's jump into the first section of Human, All Too Human.
Let's do it.
The first section is titled Of First and Last Things.
Okay.
Now, to me, that sounds like we're getting into some pretty heavy philosophical territory.
Yeah.
Are we about to tackle the meaning of life?
We're definitely getting into the big questions here. This section is all about metaphysics.
Okay.
God, the afterlife, the nature of reality.
Okay.
But Nietzsche, as always, approaches these topics from a unique perspective.
And what's his take?
Well, instead of offering his own grand theories about the universe, he starts by challenging the very foundation of our metaphysical beliefs.
So he's not trying to give us answers,
Right.
rather make us question the questions themselves?
Precisely.
Okay.
He wants us to look at these beliefs with a critical eye and to consider whether they're truly serving us
Okay.
or simply holding us back.
I can already sense this is going to be a wild ride.
Me too. He argues that our metaphysical beliefs often stem from things like dreams, psychological states, or even the structure of language itself. He suggests that language, while essential for communication, can create illusions of certainty where none exist.
It's like we've created these elaborate systems of thought to comfort ourselves in the face of the unknown, but those systems might be built on shaky ground.
Exactly. He even argues that knowledge of the metaphysical world, even if we could attain it, would be the most inconsequential of all knowledge.
Wait, really? But these are the big questions, the ultimate mysteries. Why would he say that?
Well, he uses a brilliant analogy to illustrate his point. Imagine a boatman facing a storm. In that moment of crisis, knowledge of the chemical analysis of water is useless. What matters is practical action, navigating the immediate danger.
So you're saying that instead of getting lost in abstract theories, we should focus on navigating the practical challenges of life. That's a pretty radical shift from traditional philosophy.
It is, and it leads perfectly into the next section on the history of moral feelings, where Nietzsche tackles another cornerstone of traditional thought morality.
Okay, we've gone from the nature of reality to the nature of good and evil. What's Nietzsche's take on morality? I know he called it a herd instinct, which is pretty provocative.
It is provocative, but that's Nietzsche in a nutshell. And remember, he's not just trying to be shocking. He's challenging us to question why we cling to these moral systems, even when they might be limiting us.
So instead of accepting these moral codes as absolute truths, he's saying we should examine where they came from and whether they're truly serving us.
Exactly. He argues that what we consider good or evil is largely a product of custom and tradition, not some objective universal standard.
But isn't there something to be said for having some shared sense of right and wrong? Without it, wouldn't society descend into chaos?
That's a valid concern. And Nietzsche acknowledges the need for social order, but he also wants us to recognize that moral codes can be used to control and manipulate people. He's urging us to be more critical and self-aware, to examine the origins of our moral beliefs, and to consider whether they're truly in our best interests.
It's almost like he's saying, don't just blindly follow the rules. Think for yourself. Figure out what's right for you based on your own values and experiences.
That's a core theme in Nietzsche's work. He wants us to be free spirits, individuals who can break free from the shackles of tradition and dogma and create their own values.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this idea of the free spirit connects to his rejection of traditional philosophy. It's about freeing yourself from intellectual constraints, whether it's metaphysics or morality, so you can think for yourself and create your own path.
Exactly. And that brings us to the third section, religious life, which delves into the psychology of belief and the often hidden motivations behind religious practices.
I have a feeling this is where Nietzsche really starts to push some buttons. What are some of the key insights he offers here?
One of the most striking points he makes is that the strength of an idea doesn't necessarily depend on its truthfulness. It often hinges on the power of blind faith. He argues that without blind disciples, no idea, no matter how profound or absurd, can gain widespread influence.
So he's acknowledging that even harmful ideas can spread like wildfire if people accept them uncritically.
Exactly. He's pointing out the dangers of unquestioning belief. He's not necessarily advocating for atheism, but he's challenging us to examine the psychological roots of our religious impulses and to be wary of surrendering our critical thinking to any dogma.
That makes me think about how often we latch onto beliefs without really questioning where they came from or whether they're truly serving us.
That's a trap we can easily fall into. And Nietzsche wants us to be more aware of those mental traps. He even digs into the psychology of asceticism, questioning whether practices like self-denial are truly motivated by humility or something else entirely.
Something else like what?
Well, he suggests that asceticism might be a form of vanity, a way to control our internal chaos and demonstrate our superiority over our base desires.
So even in acts of self-denial, there might be an element of ego at play.
That's a possibility he raises. It's another example of him peeling back the layers to reveal the complexity of human motivation. And it connects to his larger project of encouraging us to be more honest with ourselves about why we believe what we believe.
All right, so we've seen Nietzsche tackle metaphysics, morality, and now religion. It seems like he's systematically dismantling every pillar of traditional thought. And I'm ready to see what he does with the next one.
Let's move on to section 4, From the Soul of Artists and Writers, where Nietzsche tackles the realm of art and creativity.
Now, this is a topic I'm particularly interested in. What does Nietzsche, the master deconstructor, have to say about the creative process? Does he buy into the whole tortured genius trope?
Not at all. In fact, he completely rejects the notion that art is a gift from the gods or the result of some mystical inspiration. He argues that it's the result of hard work, discipline, and a relentless pursuit of excellence.
So no swooning muses or flashes of brilliance. It's all about sweat and toil.
Pretty much. He's advocating for a more grounded, realistic view of the creative process. He believes that great art doesn't come easily. It requires dedication, focus, and a willingness to push yourself beyond your limits.
That's actually quite inspiring. It's like he's saying that anyone can tap into their creative potential if they're willing to put in the work.
Exactly. And this section is also interesting because it reflects his own artistic journey. He's moving away from the excesses of Romanticism with its emphasis on emotion and intuition and embracing a more reasoned Apollonian aesthetic.
It seems like he's constantly pushing us to confront reality, to see things as they are without the filters of tradition or wishful thinking.
That's a great observation. And it connects to the next section, Signs of Higher and Lower Culture, where he introduces the concept of the free spirit in more detail.
Ah, yes, the free spirits. These are the individuals who embody Nietzsche's ideal of self-reliance and intellectual independence, right? But how exactly does one become a free spirit? Is it just about rebelling against authority?
It's more nuanced than that. For Nietzsche, becoming a free spirit is about cultivating a critical and discerning mind, a willingness to challenge conventional wisdom and to create your own values. It's about embracing the uncertainty of life and the constant process of becoming.
So it's not just about rejecting what you've been taught, but also about actively seeking out new knowledge, new experiences, and constantly evolving your understanding of the world.
Exactly. It's a demanding path, but one that Nietzsche believes leads to a richer, more fulfilling life.
It makes me think about how often we settle for easy answers and comfortable routines instead of challenging ourselves to grow.
That's a struggle we all face. And Nietzsche is there to remind us that true fulfillment comes from embracing the challenges, from pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones, and constantly striving to become more than we are.
Well, those are some inspiring words. But while I'm all for self-discovery and personal growth, I'm also curious about how Nietzsche views the social realm. How do we navigate the complexities of life with other people without losing ourselves in the process?
That's a great question, and it leads us into the next section, Man in Society, where Nietzsche takes a closer look at the dynamics of human interaction.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Does he offer any advice on how to win friends and influence people?
Not exactly. In fact, his view of society is quite cynical. He argues that much of social interaction is based on strategies, pretense, and self-interest. He suggests that those polite conversations and social niceties often mask a hidden agenda.
Wow, that's a pretty bleak assessment. So he's saying that those social masks we all wear are actually preventing us from forming genuine connections.
He's definitely suggesting that we often manipulate truth to fit our needs and that hypocrisy is more common than we'd like to admit.
That makes you wonder if genuine connection is even possible in a world where everyone is trying to protect their own interests.
It's a valid question, and it speaks to the tension between our desire for belonging and our need for authenticity.
Okay, so social life is a minefield of hidden agendas and strategic maneuvering. What about the world of love and relationships? Does Nietzsche offer any insights into those messy dynamics?
He does, and it gets pretty interesting. In the section titled Woman and Child, he dives into the psychology of relationships, particularly the bond between mother and son.
I remember you mentioned this earlier. He argues that everyone carries within them an image of a woman that they get from their mother, right?
Exactly. And he suggests that those early relationships can have a profound impact on our perceptions of gender roles and our expectations for love and intimacy.
So he's saying that our first experiences of love and connection, especially within the family, can shape our entire understanding of relationships.
That's what he's suggesting. And he also explores the tension between the desire for connection and the need for independence, especially for those who embrace the path of the free spirit.
I'm sensing a theme here. Nietzsche seems to be fascinated by this push and pull between our longing for belonging and our need to preserve our individuality.
It's a fundamental human dilemma, and it's one that plays out in all our relationships, from our families to our romantic partnerships to our interactions within society as a whole.
Okay, so we've covered metaphysics, morality, religion, art, society, and even the complexities of love and family. It feels like we've journeyed through the entire spectrum of human experience. What's left for Nietzsche to dissect in human, all too human?
Well, in the remaining sections, Nietzsche turns his critical gaze towards some of the most powerful forces that shape our lives.
Yeah.
The state and the idea of solitude.
Okay, I'm ready to tackle those head on. Let's start with the state. I know Nietzsche had some pretty radical views on power and authority. What does he have to say about the role of government in human life?
He definitely doesn't hold back. In the section titled A Look at the State, Nietzsche sees the state as an institution born of human need and ambition, but ultimately incapable of serving the higher aspirations of humanity. He even goes so far as to proclaim the death of the state, similar to his earlier declaration of the death of God.
Wow, those are some bold statements. Is he literally predicting the collapse of governments, or is he trying to make a larger point about the nature of power?
I think it's more of a philosophical provocation than a literal prediction. He's using these dramatic pronouncements to highlight the limitations of traditional power structures and to envision a future where individuals are free from the constraints of outdated systems.
So it's like he's using the death of the state as a metaphor for the need to rethink the way we organize ourselves and to empower individuals to take control of their own lives.
Exactly. He's challenging us to think beyond the constraints of existing systems and to imagine new ways of relating to each other and to the world around us. He's also questioning the motives behind movements for social change, arguing that they're often driven by envy and desire rather than genuine aspirations for justice.
That's a pretty cynical view of human nature, but it does make you think about the complexities of power and the challenges of creating a truly equitable society.
It certainly does, and it sets the stage for the final section of the book, Man Alone with Himself, where Nietzsche shifts his focus from the external world to the inner world, exploring the ultimate solitude of human existence.
Okay, I have to admit, after all this talk of rejecting traditional values, challenging authority, and embracing the unknown, the idea of man alone with himself is a bit daunting. What does Nietzsche have to say about solitude? Is it something to be feared or embraced?
That's a great question, and one that Nietzsche explores in depth in this final section. He emphasizes the importance of self-knowledge and the need to embrace our own unique stories, flaws, and all.
It sounds like he's encouraging us to turn inward, to find meaning and purpose within ourselves rather than seeking it in external sources.
Exactly. And I think this is a key takeaway from Human, all too human. It's a call to cultivate self-reliance, self-acceptance, and to find strength in our own individuality.
Okay, that's a powerful message. But I'm still processing everything we've discussed so far. My brain is officially full.
I hear you. It's a lot to take in. Let's take a moment to regroup before we dive back into the article's analysis of the book's individual sections.
Okay, I think I'm ready now to to dive back into the specifics of Human, all too human. The article goes deeper into each of the 9 sections, highlighting key themes and unpacking some of Nietzsche's most thought-provoking aphorisms.
Okay.
Where should we start?
Let's revisit section 1 of First and Last Things.
Okay.
It's here that Nietzsche tackles those big metaphysical questions about the nature of reality,
Right.
God and the afterlife.
Okay, those are the ultimate head scratchers. Yeah. I'm curious to see how Nietzsche, the master deconstructor, approaches them.
He starts by questioning the very foundation of our metaphysical beliefs. Instead of offering his own grand theories,
Right.
he asks, where do these beliefs come from? Are they truly divine revelations or something much more human?
Exactly. So he's not trying to spoon-feed us answers, but rather make us question the questions themselves.
He wants us to examine these beliefs with a critical eye, to consider whether they're truly serving us or simply holding us back.
And how does he propose we go about this examination? Does he offer any tools or methods for dissecting these deeply ingrained beliefs?
He suggests looking at the origins of these beliefs,
Okay.
tracing them back to our psychological states, our dreams, even the structure of language itself.
That's fascinating. So he's saying that the way we use language, the very words we use to describe the world, might be shaping our understanding of reality.
He argues that language, while essential for communication, can also create illusions of certainty where none exist. We create these elaborate systems of thought based on words.
Right.
But those words might not correspond to any objective truth.
It's like we've built these intricate castles in the sky, but we haven't checked to see if they have any real foundation.
That's a great analogy. And Nietzsche goes even further, arguing that even if we could attain knowledge of a metaphysical world, it would be the most inconsequential of all knowledge.
Wait, really? But these are the big questions, the ultimate mysteries. How could he possibly say that?
Well, he uses a brilliant analogy to illustrate his point. Imagine a boatman facing a storm. In that moment of crisis, abstract knowledge about the chemical composition of water is useless. What matters is practical action navigating the immediate danger.
So instead of getting lost in abstract theories, we should be focusing on the practical challenges of life, on navigating the storms that come our way.
Exactly. And this leads perfectly into the next section on the history of moral feelings, where Nietzsche tackles another cornerstone of traditional thought morality.
Okay, we've gone from the nature of reality to the nature of good and evil. What's Nietzsche's take on morality? I know he called it a herd instinct.
Right.
Which seems to imply that it's more about conformity than any innate sense of right and wrong.
You've hit the nail on the head. Nietzsche argues that what we consider good or evil is largely a product of custom and tradition, not some objective universal standard. He sees morality as a set of rules imposed by society to maintain order and control.
But isn't there something to be said for having some shared sense of right and wrong?
Yeah.
Wouldn't society descend into chaos without it?
He acknowledges the need for social order, but he also urges us to question those rules, to examine their origins, and to consider whether they're truly serving us or simply limiting our potential.
So instead of blindly accepting the moral codes we've inherited, we should be actively questioning them, examining whether they align with our own values and experiences.
Precisely. It's about becoming a free spirit, as he puts it. Someone who can break free from the shackles of tradition and dogma and create their own values.
This all makes me think about those times when I felt pressured to conform to certain beliefs or behaviors, even when they didn't feel quite right to me. Maybe Nietzsche is urging us to trust our own inner compass, even if it leads us off the beaten path.
That's a great insight.
Yeah.
And it connects to the next section, religious life, where Nietzsche really dives into the psychology of belief and the often hidden motivations behind religious practices.
Okay.
He challenges us to examine why we believe what we believe, to question the roots of our faith.
I have a feeling this is where things get really controversial. What are some of the key insights he offers in this section?
One of the most striking points he makes is about the power of blind faith and how it can be harnessed to spread any idea whether it's true or false. He argues that without blind disciples, no belief system, no matter how profound or absurd, can gain widespread influence.
That's a bit unsettling, but also undeniably true. We see it all the time, don't we? Ideas, both good and bad, can spread like wildfire if enough people are willing to accept them without question.
He's not necessarily advocating for atheism, but he's urging us to be cautious, to examine our beliefs critically, and to be wary of surrendering our reason to any dogma.
That reminds me of something you said earlier about language creating illusions of certainty. It seems like Nietzsche is constantly reminding us to be skeptical, to question everything, to never take anything for granted.
He's definitely a champion of critical thinking.
Yeah.
And in this section, he even digs into the psychology of asceticism, questioning whether practices like self-denial are truly motivated by humility or something else entirely.
Something else? Like what? Is he saying that people who practice asceticism are secretly driven by ego?
Well, he suggests that it might be a way to control our internal chaos, to demonstrate our superiority over our base desires. It's not necessarily a conscious motivation.
Right.
But he's suggesting that even in acts of self-denial, there might be an element of pride or self-aggrandizement at play.
So even when we're trying to renounce the world, we might still be caught in the web of ego. That's a pretty sobering thought.
It's a reminder that human motivation is complex, and even our most seemingly selfless acts can have hidden agendas.
All right, so far we've seen Nietzsche tackle metaphysics, morality, and now religion. It feels like he's systematically dismantling every pillar of traditional thought. What's next on his deconstruction agenda?
Well, let's move on to section 4, From the Soul of Artists and Writers, where Nietzsche turns his attention to the realm of art and creativity.
I'm eager to hear his take on this. Does he subscribe to the romantic notion of the tortured genius struck by divine inspiration?
Not at all. In fact, he completely rejects the idea that art is a gift from the gods or a product of some mystical inspiration. He sees it as the result of hard work, discipline, and a relentless pursuit of excellence.
Right.
He's basically saying, roll up your sleeves and get to work.
So no swooning muses or flashes of brilliance. It's all about sweat and toil.
Pretty much. He's advocating for a more grounded, realistic view of the creative process. He believes that great art doesn't come easily. It requires dedication, focus, and a willingness to push yourself beyond your limits.
I appreciate that perspective. It's easy to get caught up in the romanticized version of creativity, but ultimately it's the consistent effort that leads to mastery.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this section also reveals a shift in Nietzsche's own artistic sensibility.
Okay.
He's moving away from the excesses of romanticism, with its emphasis on emotion and intuition,
Okay.
and embracing a more reasoned Apollonian aesthetic.
It seems like he's constantly challenging us to confront reality, to see things as they are without the filters of tradition or wishful thinking. And speaking of confronting reality, I'm ready to tackle section 5, Signs of Higher and Lower Culture, where he introduces the concept of the free spirit in more detail.
This section is crucial for understanding Nietzsche's overall philosophy. He sees these free spirits as the individuals who will lead humanity toward a brighter future. They're the ones who question everything, push boundaries, and challenge the status quo.
Okay, I'm all for independent thinking and challenging norms, but what exactly does it mean to be a free spirit in Nietzsche's view? Is it just about rebelling against authority?
It's more profound than simple rebellion. For Nietzsche, a free spirit embodies a commitment to truth-seeking self-discovery and the creation of one's own values. It's about embracing uncertainty, constantly learning and evolving.
It sounds like a demanding path, but also incredibly empowering. It's about taking ownership of your own life, your own beliefs, your own destiny.
Exactly. And it's not an easy path. Nietzsche recognizes that free spirits will often face opposition and misunderstanding from those who cling to traditional ways of thinking.
Which makes me think about those times when I've hesitated to speak my truth or challenge belief that didn't sit right with me. Maybe Nietzsche's encouraging us to be bolder.
Yes.
To stand up for what we believe in, even when it's uncomfortable.
He's definitely urging us to find our own voices and to live authentically, even if it means going against the grain.
Well, I'm all for authenticity and forging your own path, but I'm also a social creature. How does Nietzsche reconcile this idea of the free spirit with the reality that we live in a world with other people? How do we navigate those relationships without losing ourselves in the process?
That's a great question, and it leads us into the next section, Man and Society, where Nietzsche takes a closer look at the dynamics of human interaction. And I have to warn you, his view of society is not exactly rosy.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me. What's Nietzsche's take on the social game?
He argues that much of social interaction is based on strategies, pretense, and self-interest. He suggests that those polite conversations and social niceties we engage in often mask a hidden agenda. We're all trying to get something from each other, whether it's validation status or resources.
So he's saying that even our most seemingly genuine interactions might be tainted by ulterior motives. That's a pretty cynical view of human nature.
He's definitely not known for his optimism. But he's not saying that all social interaction is inherently false or manipulative. He's simply urging us to be aware of the games we play, the masks we wear, and the power dynamics that are always at play.
That makes me think about those times when I've felt like I was putting on a performance, trying to present a certain image to the world, even if it didn't feel entirely authentic. Maybe Nietzsche's are reminding us to be more mindful of our social interactions, to be more honest with ourselves and with others.
It's about finding a balance between engaging with society and preserving your individuality,
Yeah.
which can be a delicate dance.
Okay, so social life is a complex dance of masks and motives. What about love and relationships? Does Nietzsche offer any guidance on navigating those messy waters?
He does, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
In the section titled Woman and Child, he delves into the psychology of relationships, exploring the profound impact that our early bonds,
Right.
particularly with our mothers, have on our adult lives.
You mentioned this earlier about how everyone carries within them an image of woman that they get from their mother.
Yes, and he suggests that this image can shape our perceptions of women in general, our expectations for romantic relationships, and even our understanding of our own gender identity.
So he's saying that our first experiences of love and connection, especially those within our families, can have a ripple effect throughout our lives, influencing how we relate to others and how we see ourselves.
He's pointing out that those early relationships lay the foundation for our emotional development and our understanding of intimacy. And he's particularly interested in the mother-son bond, arguing that it can be both a source of strength and a potential trap.
A trap, how so?
He suggests that mothers often project their own unfulfilled desires and aspirations onto their sons,
Right.
which can create a sense of obligation and expectation that can be difficult to shake off.
So even in the most loving of relationships, there can be these unconscious dynamics at play that can shape our lives in profound ways.
Exactly. And this connects to his larger point about the importance of self-awareness and the need to critically examine the forces that have shaped us.
Okay, so we've covered metaphysics, morality, religion, art, society, and the complexities of family relationships. It feels like we've journeyed through the entire spectrum of human experience. What's left for Nietzsche to dissect in Human, All Too Human?
Well, in the remaining sections, he turns his critical gaze towards some of the most powerful forces that shape our lives,
Okay.
the state and the idea of solitude.
I'm ready to dive into those head on. Let's start with the state. I know Nietzsche was a fierce critic of authority and had some pretty radical ideas about power. What's his take on the role of government in human life?
He doesn't hold back. In the section titled A Look at the State, Nietzsche sees the state as an institution born of human need and ambition, but ultimately incapable of serving the higher aspirations of humanity. He even goes so far as to proclaim the death of the state, similar to his earlier declaration of the death of God.
Wow, those are some bold statements. Is he literally predicting the collapse of governments, or is he trying to make a larger point about the nature of power?
I think it's more of a philosophical provocation than a literal prediction. He's using this dramatic imagery to challenge us to think beyond the constraints of traditional power structures
Okay.
and to envision a future where individuals are free from the control of outdated systems.
So he's not necessarily advocating for anarchy, but rather for a more decentralized, individualistic approach to governance.
He's urging us to question the authority of the state and to consider alternative ways of organizing ourselves.
Right.
Ways that prioritize individual freedom and self-determination.
That makes me think about all the movements throughout history that have sought to overthrow oppressive regimes and create more equitable societies. Nietzsche seems to be aligning himself with that spirit of rebellion, that drive to challenge the status quo and create something better.
He's definitely a champion of individual empowerment and the questioning of authority. And in this section, he also delves into the psychology of those who demand equality, suggesting that their motives might not always be as pure as they seem.
Okay, that's an interesting twist. What's his take on the motivations behind those who fight for social justice?
He argues that their demands for equality might be driven more by resentment and envy than a genuine desire for fairness. He's not dismissing the importance of social justice,
Right.
but he's challenging us to examine the underlying motivations behind these movements.
That's a thought-provoking perspective, and one that's sure to spark debate. It seems like Nietzsche is always pushing us to look deeper, to question everything, even our most cherished beliefs.
He's constantly challenging us to think critically and to be honest with ourselves about the forces that shape our beliefs and behaviors.
And after deconstructing so many cherished beliefs and challenging the very foundations of society, Nietzsche leaves us with that final, poignant reflection on solitude in Man Alone with Himself.
It's a fitting conclusion to such a wide-ranging exploration of the human condition. In this final section, Nietzsche turns his attention inward, urging us to embrace the solitude that is at the core of our existence. He suggests that true strength and self-knowledge can only be found when we confront ourselves alone with our thoughts and feelings.
It's a bit daunting, this idea of facing ourselves without the distractions of the external world. But is he suggesting that we should all become hermits, withdrawing from society to contemplate our navels?
Not necessarily.
Rrr.
He recognizes the importance of connection and community, but he believes that true connection can only arise from a place of self-awareness and inner strength. He writes, "One must be able to be alone as a child is alone, namely alone, and without feeling that it is a condition that needs to be remedied."
So it's not about rejecting relationships, but rather about cultivating a sense of inner wholeness that allows us to connect with others from a place of strength and authenticity.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And I think it's one of the most enduring messages of Human to Human. Nietzsche is reminding us that the journey of self-discovery is ultimately a solitary one, but it's a journey that can lead to profound joy, wisdom, and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Well, this has been an incredible journey through Nietzsche's mind. Human, All Too Human is definitely a book that will stay with me, provoking questions and challenging assumptions long after I finish reading it.
It's a book that demands to be wrestled with,
Yeah.
debated and revisited again and again.
And I have a feeling we've only just scratched the surface of Nietzsche's thought.
Right.
There's so much more to explore in his work.
Absolutely. He's a philosopher who continues to challenge and inspire generations of readers. And I encourage everyone listening to delve deeper into his work and discover the insights that resonate with you.
On that note, we'll leave you with one final thought from Nietzsche to ponder.
Okay.
He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. What are the values that give your life meaning and purpose? What are the whys that drive you?
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into the ideas that matter.